Hello everybody, and welcome back to the extras for the Kingdom Hearts 2 playthrough. This time it's time to head through the absolutely massive collection of character files, because if you hadn't realised, there are a lot of characters in the Kingdom Hearts 2 franchise. Franchise? Kingdom Hearts 2 franchise? What? In Kingdom Hearts 2. There we go, that's a bit more accurate. Now, the really awesome thing about these character files is that not only do they show off the model, but they also have a little backstory for each of the characters, and they also tell you their first appearance. So Donald Duck's first appearance was in The Wise Little Hen in 1934, and Goofy's was in 2 Weeks Vacation in 1952. And they do stuff like that, which is just really, really, really awesome. And yeah, I think you may be wondering, why the hell are you showing this off? Because this is like 25 minutes of character files. But my retort to that is, I don't think this stuff gets shown off anywhere else. Like, I mean, there's probably a reason for that. But it's like, this is interesting stuff, and it is part of the game, and like, I've reached that point where I really like to show off as much as I possibly can. So, I mean, I didn't do it for the original Kingdom Hearts, and Kingdom Hearts is Jiminy's Journal is, well, not as intense and full. Does very similar stuff. Also, Stitch! Yeah, I just gush whenever Stitch is on screen. It's because I'm a massive Lilo and Stitch fan, as you probably guessed. I'm just that much of a loser. But, oh my gosh, this is a really random anecdote, and I guess it kind of tells that we are at this part of the playthrough where I have nothing to say, and I've got loads of time to not have anything to say. But basically, for my 21st birthday, which was recently, and by recently I mean the other month, in terms of when this is being recorded, my sister got me a really awesome Stitch t-shirt, and it's basically Stitch in a toothless onesie, so Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. It's like the most amazing thing ever, and I love it. And I am such a geek. But I've actually got a couple of Stitch t-shirts, actually. Like, I am such a saddo. I mean, to be perfect honest, I'm a massive Disney saddo, because if you kind of asked me to sing a song from a Disney movie, probably be able to do at least one, sometimes the entire soundtrack. In certain cases, it would be the entire soundtrack, because I am that sad. But, I mean, there are some Disney films that I don't know anything from. I mean, it's mostly the earliest stuff. It's like between Snow White and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, there are loads of holes. But it's mostly because those are the ones that nobody watches anymore. Because they're not important. And it's only sort of, I guess once you get to around where, it's after the 50s, that I think the films that I start to know a lot more come into focus. Because, like, I mean, love Robin Hood and the Aristocats and Oliver and Company. I mean, it's kind of 70s, 80s as well, but yeah, I love my Disney. It explains why I love Kingdom Hearts as much as I do. It's because of Disney. Because, I mean, that's the thing, even though it's so commercialised and, I mean, it's so manipulative in the marketing, and, well, in essence, the films may not be technically the best thing ever. Like, I mean, as a child, they are wonderful, and, I mean, as a child, you don't really care about anything. I don't know whether it was earlier in this playthrough or not. I mean, I would have assumed it would have been. But I was rewatching a film that I used to love as a child. Like, absolutely, completely and utterly love. And it was Dot and the Kangaroo. And there's a picture of me watching it as a kid. And I rewatched it recently, and it's awful. Like, it is certifiably terrible. But I loved it as a kid. And it's sort of, it's not quite a complete comparison, but the same is true of a lot of Disney stuff. Is that, I mean, the animation is phenomenal. Like, they are outstanding. But plot-wise, there are a lot of problems that happen. And the thing is, you get away with a hell of a lot when you're targeting kids. Like, you get away with so much. So much. Like, there's some filthy jokes in Disney and other kids-related films. You just don't recognise them, because you're innocent to these things. And, yeah. And I think I'm just babbling here, but what else can you expect me to do? I mean, if you want to be reading this stuff, you've just gotta pause and read. Just basically follow the instructions I gave you the last time. But we will get through this, don't you worry. Now, the thing that I quite like about the organisation members' designs, it's this really massive tangent, but I'll go into it now, is that when they've got the hoods up, you can actually tell the difference between them. Like, all of their coats have sort of unique elements in terms of the bodies. You can basically tell by the body type and shape. It's difficult, unless you know the organisation members absolutely, completely, well and truly, brilliantly, very well. I have no idea what that sentence was, but it was there. But yeah, you can tell the difference between them, which is just amazing. I mean, there is the whole thing of, well, of course you can tell the difference between them because they're different models. But, I mean, when you're looking at them, you struggle to be able to tell who's who, but you can figure it out. Which is a nice touch, because they could have just gone with a kind of automatic, simple model, and just put it for all of them. And then that could have just like, yep, done, let's move on. But no, they made individual models for all of them. And to be perfectly honest, it's kind of indicative of how Square Enix works in general, because their attention to detail in the models and the visual quality of their games is just insane. And they do it to the detriment of everything else. I mean, I can't remember quite what game it was talking about, but I seem to recall, it might have been Final Fantasy 15, to be honest, but somebody who worked at Square Enix was talking about, oh no, it was Final Fantasy 14, that was it. He was basically saying that the designers, like, were focusing, like, so intently on the artisticness of, like, barrels, and were putting so many details into, like, barrels that just were useless. And that was basically preventing any progress from happening, because everyone was so intently focused on the tiniest of details, because they are kind of artistic perfectionists. And that's basically why kind of after Final Fantasy X-ish, they kind of took a nosedive because they wanted to try and make everything look so good and so amazing that they struggled to make games. And, I mean, if anything, that is the reason why Final Fantasy XV has taken so long to get to even the implication of it coming out. And I think it's all because of the whole restructuring process that they went through because of what happened with Final Fantasy XIV. And I at least hope that now Square Enix understand that you can get away with using the odd, just same model. You can reuse assets. I mean, there are certain elements where, no, you do not reuse assets, you create something new. But if it's something that's incredibly unimportant, like a barrel, like sort of a box or whatever, you don't need to create something new and very intricate. It needs to be functional. It can look great, but it needs to be functional and not take a ridiculously long time. Because otherwise you just get nowhere and you're stuck in an endless cycle of designing and never actually doing anything. And that sucks. I should probably also bring up that something you should be able to tell from a lot of these designs is that Tetsuya Nomura, as a character designer, has a lot of interesting quirks, in that he likes very, very, very busy designs. Like, the Disney stuff is all very simple, but the Final Fantasy stuff is just like, whoa, that is crazy, and completely and utterly insane. Prime example being the Tetsuya Nomura Batman model thingy that was shown off. Like, that was insane! And, I mean, I think that also ties relatively neatly back into what I was saying about Square Enix having a problem with overcomplicating things. And, well, it is exactly that. And while I love Nomura's designs, I think they're generally quite cool, if quirky. I think he too needs to just settle a little bit. Just realise that simplicity sometimes is key. And sometimes the simpler design actually works best. I mean, Kirby, prime example. Like, he's so simple in design, and yet he just... It works. Everything about Kirby works. Which is insane. Also, having just been on Phil for a little minute there, there's something that I read the other day, which just kind of sort of blew my mind. Is that when, I can't remember when it is in the film, but there's Phil's whole thing of saying, like, 2 words and then saying 6, for example. Well, basically, somebody figured out that, in one instance at least, because the language that Hercules and co would be speaking would have been Greek, ancient Greek, that what Phil would have been saying in ancient Greek was actually the correct number of words that Phil stated he would use. I honestly cannot physically remember what that information was. I don't even know whether it's fully correct, because I think it may have just been a thing that turned up on my Facebook feed. But it does not surprise me, because, I mean, Greek words are complicated. Like, oikos and polis for the home and the city, and anagnorisis for the recognition moment and stuff. I've just realised, talking about Hercules, getting back onto Greek tragedy terms, because that's where I'm learning stuff from. I thought I'd gotten away from tragedy for a while, evidently not. But don't worry, we're nearly done. We've only got 10 more minutes of my inane rambling before we get onto something that's arguably a little bit more interesting than the character files. Now, one thing that I wish you could do here is actually properly look at them. Oh no, you can look at the proper model by pressing triangle and rotating and all that. And it's cool that you can do that, but I'd say, if anything, I probably would have preferred it if they'd just done what they did with Bayonetta, in that don't have any of this information stuff. I mean, have like the name and the original thing that they came from, but just have the model and just let us rotate it. Makes it so much simpler and quicker, because there's not all this reading to do. And I say, I don't want to be reading here. So I'm doing an English literature course, and I want to write a book. I question my logic here, because it's slightly balmy. Either way, probably one of the only annoying things, well, one of the annoying things about Jiminy's Journal is that whenever you get it up, it uses the music of the location you're in. So seeing as we are standing at the basically final resting point in the world that never was, we get this, and it's not the best thing in the world. It's fine when you're there, but it doesn't make this very interesting at all. Sorry for that. Now, I believe that in basically every single world, Sora has a slightly different description. Slightly different. I don't think it changes that much. But yeah. Also, love a bit of Hakuna Matata. Great song, and also it's a great motto. Although, having said that, sometimes you do need to worry because you need to, act on the stuff that happens. You can't let Scar take over the Pride Lands. You've got to take it back. You are the rightful heir to the throne. So you can't let your evil uncle be evil. But there is a goodness in just relaxing with things. Just letting stuff wash over you. Because, it means no worries for the rest of your days. Because it's a problem-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata. Problem with that is that it may be a philosophy that allows you to be free of problems, but it's not a problem-free philosophy, because it inherently has problems. Which, never actually thought of it like that before. Oh god, I'm just tearing apart a Disney song that I love. Also, I have to say, the kind of little sea urchin things that Ursula turns her mermaid victims into, it's just terrifying and really sad. And in the cave where, well, in the tunnel to her lair in the film, just that is one of the creepiest bits ever. It's creepy when you see it in the original Kingdom Hearts, but in the film it's just like, oh my god. It's terrifying. Now, I do really, really like that they allowed us to go to Disney Castle in Kingdom Hearts 2. It's really awesome that they did, because, I mean, in the original game, it was just that area where it's just like, I want to go, but I can't because it will never let me, and I don't know why it won't let me. And then they let us come, and it was just brilliant. And even though it was small, and not a lot happened, it was just nice to get that little journey. And also, we get to have a closer look at Horace and Clarabelle and Clara. It's odd, because while Horace and Clarabelle have kind of stayed in the Disney canon, Clara Cluck's kind of vanished. Like, I don't remember her as a character at all. Whereas I do know Horace and Clarabelle. Which is odd. But then I guess, sort of, Disney do tend to like to keep their characters alive, no matter what. It's very rare that they'll let them go. A la Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Who Disney now, again, own, and have therefore made great use of him. Although, great use of him in two pretty shoddy games. Although, there is a slight little reference to him in Big Hero 6, which I love. Saw that the other day, and just melted my heart. It's not a perfect film, don't get me wrong, but it's a wonderful addition to the Disney canon. And, I mean, I would love a Big Hero 6 world in Kingdom Hearts 3, but I would suspect it's way too late at this point. Like, Big Hero 6 would be something for Kingdom Hearts 4, should that happen, or whatever the next step is for the Kingdom Hearts series. Because obviously, after the Xehanort saga is over, they want to continue it, but where will they go? What will they do? We will have to wait and see. But should that come, and when it does come, a Big Hero 6 world would be nice. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could do with it, which would just be amazing, really. And it'd actually be a great way of shutting up all the people wanting Marvel in Kingdom Hearts, because it wouldn't be Marvel in Kingdom Hearts, it would just be Disney's Marvel in Kingdom Hearts. So, kind of, it would work better than, I think, Iron Man and Captain America and all of that would do. Because I do think they'd just be really odd. And it's the same with Star Wars. Because even though Star Wars works very, very, very surprisingly well in the context of Kingdom Hearts' kind of setup, it would just look odd. It would suffer the exact same problems that Pirates suffered from. There is a solution in, like, the grid in Dream Drop Distance, but still. Anyway, that's the character files done. One more part of this to go. Woo!